I suppose.
I suppose. Mm. We had a wonderful fan who sent that in to us. Who, really thought that was hilarious. Oh, yeah? Well, here I am quickly looking through. Don't do this to me. I'm sorry. I was going to accidentally mistake. I'm never going to do that again. But I'm never going to do that again. What? It looks like we're live. And you know what? We're live with me actually promising the airwaves that I'm never going to do that again. But the secret is that you'll never know what I'm never going to do again because I'm going to keep that off the air. We're on the air, we're live. This is a live show. Heavens to Murgatroyd, as Snagglepuss used to say. Exit, stage left. Actually, if you want an accurate Snagglepuss from the old Hanna-Barbera, it would go something like this. Heavens to Murgatroyd. Exit, stage left. Yeah, that's it. There you go. And he would just run off stage. I love me some Snagglepuss. Oh, by the way, welcome to the OneRing.net. This is Torn Tuesday. We are live, coming to you live via satellite from London, here from the royal wedding. No, we're not doing any coverage of the royal wedding. That's old news. We've got much more exciting news to talk about. Maybe a future royal wedding between Arwen and Aragorn. That's the only royal wedding I'm interested in talking about. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. And off stage, we have wonderful co-host who's not with me. He's off there somewhere. Hi. Justin, my co-host. We have Caroline Knight, one of our favorite cosplayers. She is here. But in order for everybody to see you, all right, that's really cute. We've got that camera come in and say hi. That's you right there. Yeah, there you go. Caroline. No, you're on. You are live. I can see you now. Everybody can see you. We're here at the bar. We're at Scum and Villainy Cantina, an extraordinary place here in Hollywood. It is an outer space, galactic themed bar that supports all these fandoms, including Star Trek fandom, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien fandom. All of us ringers are here. And of course, Star Wars fans and many other fandoms have a lot of great events. There's great food, a drink menu that can't be beat. You guys, I don't know where your drink menu is, but I'm gonna, am I supposed to be like doing this show dry? Am I supposed to be doing this show with empty-handed? You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Here's their menu. We must be cautious, right? great menu, got drinks. So what's with the spicy margaritas, guys? Like really, really, like jalapeno, like really jalapeno tequila. Well, we got jalapeno, habanero, and habanero tequila. All right, this is amazing. We've got great drinks. We've got great yummies. We're here live. This is Torn Tuesday. Without further ado, I want to say hello, everybody. Welcome to the live show. It's very, very good to have you all here. Look, there's Pipske, Sarah. I've got Aragorn. That's a name I need to say 5 times fast. Aragorn. Hey, yes, thanks, Jen. Jen remembers Snagglepuss. So we're opening the show now. This is Torn Tuesday. TheOneRing.net is your one-stop shop for all things Tolkien fandom. All the ringers in the world have known us for about 18 years now as the most significant, the largest, and most comprehensive web portal for all Lord of the Rings fans and Silmarillion fans and Hobbit fans. We're all here. Justin might actually join us in a little while. Carolyn, we've got a microphone for you. Now we're going to turn it on.
Is it on now?
Should be on now. Is it on? Try it.
Hello. Oh, it works.
Yeah,
Okay.
Does that work?
I'm surrounded by stuff, so these are very, very cute.
You got these cute toys? Yeah, we've got lots of toys.
Adorable.
You can't do a show. Oh my gosh. Hello. He must have taken his ring of invisibility off. This is our guy Justin, my co-host and producer, the guy behind the scenes, doing all the mischief. This is my favorite My Neighbor Totoro hat because I'm a Miyazaki fan as much as I am a Ringer fan. Trust me. Carolyn, hi. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
It is so good to see
you.
Right?
I've been caught up with work. You know how evil work is. And
yes.
So, you know.
That's, hey,
so,
that's capitalism.
There we go. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But
so,
I figured I'd stop by. I gave you guys gifts earlier.
You
they're from
did.
Fable in Black. She's
so
amazing.
Cool.
She's from London. She sells these on Etsy. They're little hard enamel pins.
This is a beautiful enamel cloison pin,
yes.
Classic style.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice, beautifully made, with J.R.R. Tolkien's monogram on this beautiful enamel pin.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, that's very thoughtful.
Yeah, of course, she designed those. And so if you guys ever want to check her out, she's on Etsy. So.
On Etsy, and where do we find her?
Etsy.com, Fable and Black.
Fable and Black.
Yeah.
Wow, that's almost like a Harry Potter name, Fable and Black, Gringotts and Blots.
She does sell Harry Potter enamels too.
She does,
yeah,
really?
Yeah, they're really amazing.
Oh,
she
there you go.
Them.
There you go. He's trying to put that up there. Yeah. Fable and Black. That's good. Thank you, John. That's fun. Really beautiful Lord of the Rings pin. It's out of focus, but it's lovely. All right. Sarah, Marfles, welcome back to the live chat on YouTube. We encourage all the audience who's out there to join us. My name is QuickBeam online. I've used my pseudonym QuickBeam for a very long time at TheOneRing.net. My real name, IRL, is Clifford Broadway. Let's see if I can remember my own bloody name. It's good to have you guys here. Welcome to the show. There's so much news that we personally broke we broke the internet a couple of weeks ago with our news about young Aragorn. We've got fan casting that became a wild topic last week. We were just casting our minds out to who these actors might possibly be who could come in at stages of his life to play this character, Aragorn, because we know the Amazon television series, which has been produced, is about to be produced for over $500 million after the licensing fee. It's probably going to go up to $1 billion with the 5-season commitment. We're going to talk about the Amazon show and their unusual approach to doing this because they're forcing the people who are making the show under the license. The Tolkien estate is forcing them to go into production within 2 years, and that is a fast development time to get under the camera, right?
Of course. And congrats again on your Twitter moment, though. I want to congratulate you on that. It was worldwide, and I retweeted the heck out of it and liked it and made sure everyone could see it.
Caroline, thank you. Caroline is one of our favorite cosplayers. Very talented, very, very talented Ringer fan. She knows her stuff, and I'm telling you what, I'd never expected to be in a Twitter moment about that. I figured I would do something terribly awkward or embarrassing somewhere in my life.
You're fine, don't worry.
Like I would be one of those guys trying to do a backflip into a lake that would go horribly wrong, but then I would land on 2 perfectly balanced dolphins, and I would go riding off into the sunset with dolphins for water skis. I thought that would be my Twitter moment. Instead, I ended up cracking the news about young Aragorn. Well, so disappointing.
But congrats.
No, I'm
It's still really good.
I'm just making up the most outrageous crap. I'm just making it up. Welcome, everybody. The hardworking staff of Scum and Villainy Cantina are here. Wave hi, guys. Hey, there they are. See that handsome bartender's going to make you a handsome drink. Y'all, come on down, visit us. We're here at the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Cahuenga. We're open for business. We have such delightful things on this menu. I don't think I'll do the habanero tequila because, you know.
This is new to me. I've not heard of this. Do you guys have it on the menu right now?
You should try it. You should try taking a close look.
Let me see this.
There's so many great drinks on this menu.
I'll order one right now.
Yummy food. We're going to probably get some queso later on. I'm in the mood for queso.
I know, right? Queso's always good.
Always, always. Yes. So before Justin comes back and starts to railroad this entire show into the ground with his jokes. I'm kidding. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. YouTube, Periscope, Instagram Live, Twitter Live. We're all over the place, broadcasting around the world. And thank you again to the audience that's way over there in Europe, Africa, and all the people staying up very, very late at night to watch us over in those time zones. Thank you for staying up late. It's going to be awesome. Hey, okay, you didn't get to catch up on any of our fan casting.
Again, work, but
conversation.
I've been trying to step up my Twitter game and trying to go online a bit more afterwards, at least after work when I'm like half zombied out, but
Yeah.
I'm still trying though.
Right, you work long days, don't you?
I do.
What line of business are you in?
It's a flex of work schedule. What that is that depending on, I'm trying to not reveal too much about work because it's government related.
Sure.
So
So you work in the public sector. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, what
the demands on your job must be quite unique. The demands on your job
are quite
must be quite unique. I'm thinking.
It is. It's unique. It's depending on what you put in, and depending on what the boss wants you to do with the writing documents. I made a tweet about this, like a humorous tweet, or my poor attempt at humor at a tweet. I said one where you have to submit 15 documents before the deadline, and then I just put a picture of Frodo when he's like paralyzed in this funny one from the Return of the King, and try to relate to that. And so, but that's what it basically is, just a lot of writing, a lot of documents. And
yes.
And so you can imagine just the hours. So it's just slow improvement.
I can totally.
So.
I'm glad that you got released from the gulag.
Yes,
to come out and play.
There you go.
Thanks for being able to come out and play, Carolyn. It's lovely to see you.
Of course. I love to be
here. Here we go. We have a hotline. I want to remind everyone in the world that you can participate with our show live. You can come into the live chat. You can tell us your opinions of Amazon's upcoming show. Your thoughts on what possibilities we might endeavor to go down the narrative rabbit hole with this new series. Yes. Just the first season, we could let our minds speculate in the future about what the other 4 or 5 seasons look like. But the first season, young Aragorn. And look at that. I don't have that number floating across my screen, but there it is. Oh, it just appeared. Text us. Call us on the hotline, 530-64 FRODO. So I look at the website for the Independent, the United Kingdom, the Independent UK. I'm on their news website where they've launched a story about us breaking the story about young Aragorn. Thank you. Yes. And believe it or not, they use that actual clip where Aragorn turns and looks at Gimli and Legolas and Gandalf, and he says very quietly, "For Frodo." They showed that right there, front and center.
Amazing.
Yes, I'm glad they did.
Oh, do you need a mic?
No, he doesn't need a mic. He's got a mic.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't need a mic.
I don't want you to feel excluded. So.
Nobody wants to hear him anyways. He does not need a mic. This guy. I love this guy. No. No, seriously. Oh, Justin. Oh, no.
Oh. No, come back.
Oh,
I'll reel him in.
Come back, Mr. Justin. Come on back, Mr. Justin. We love you, buddy. You're my buddy.
You're loved.
You're my buddy. You're my buddy. Just like when I talk to my neighbor's dog, who's my buddy? No, I'm kidding. Just totally. Comedy tonight.
Keep laughing. Go ahead.
On the one, no, get your microphone and start. Get your microphone.
All right. I'll join the show.
Please join the show.
Now that everyone's in the chat room, welcome to the show.
Yes, please welcome to the show. Can we begin?
The show doesn't start till I get here.
No, it does.
So you can begin
It does
right
start
now.
when I open my mouth. That's when the show starts.
All right. Then can we begin?
I endorse the beginning of this show. We have begun. Now the show has officially begun. Wait a minute. Let's do a non sequitur, okay?
All right, Kyle, why aren't you here? We could use some cosplayers at the bar right here.
Yeah,
We could.
cosplayers
I
always welcome.
completely agree. We need Kyle here.
We do need Kyle here all the time.
Yeah, where is he? He's working.
No.
Non sequitur, total non sequitur.
Okay.
Blade Runner 2049 just appeared on HBO.
It's a
And
beautiful
everybody
movie.
I know is talking about it. They're like, oh, I want to watch this. And I have a very, very close friend who has not seen the original Blade Runner. And he wants to jump ahead and go onto HBO and watch the
That's
sequel
fine. That's
right
fine.
now. And I said, no.
Yes.
I said most of the impact of the second film might be lost on you if you haven't seen the first film.
No, I disagree.
Tell me why.
I
I'm
think
intrigued by this.
Blade Runner 2049 is its own story with its own characters. You go through 2/3 of the movie without any callbacks to the old story, and then when they are introduced, you're caught up pretty quickly. And in fact, the storyline, the key storyline
I don't know
in
about that.
2049 has nothing to do with anything in the first film. So you can actually enter the Blade Runner universe with the new movie and then return to the original film and get more context and appreciate it even more.
I don't think that the appearance of Sean Young in 2049.
Oh my! What? You're the worst spoiler.
Sorry.
I'm not letting you watch anything.
I need to tell you that I don't think Blade Runner 2049 works at all as an impactful piece of storytelling unless you are rather immersed in the first film. But this is my opinion.
It is your opinion, and
It's
it's
just
wrong.
my opinion. Everybody's got one.
2049 it's an Oscar-winning film. It is a brilliant piece of cinema. It stands on its own. And the interesting thing
Okay.
about the original Blade Runner is that there's been so many disagreements between the studio and the director of the original Blade Runner that there are 5 different versions, official released versions of Blade Runner. Different edits, different lengths, different effects, different stories, different characters, different narration.
Different endings, yes.
Right.
Yeah, but
That-
the
that-
only
that-
one
that
worth the only one worth watching is the final cut, where Harrison Ford's narration is removed and the original ending that Ridley Scott wanted is put in.
And many people did not see the final cut. They only enjoyed the movie that was originally released in theaters. So you can enjoy 2049. It's a great movie on its own. But and then you can go back and revisit Blade Runner or the Blade Runner Final Cut, and then you can come back again to 2049 again and get even more context to that. So
That's the context I'm looking for. I mean, I'm that kind of guy who wants to see all the films in order and wants to understand why filmmakers in a later film would put in anything that is a callback to the first film.
This is a long
that's-
route to get Cliff to announce that he is supporting Ryan Gosling for young Aragorn.
I'm not supporting Ryan Gosling for young Aragorn. No, what? You're funny. Well, let's take the same question. There's a reason why I opened up the show with this question.
Yeah, get to that reason.
The question is, now that we've got all 6 Middle-earth films from Peter Jackson, and I love asking this because it's very, very important. You've got a newbie who's never read the books. You want to show them these films. Do you start them with the Lord of the Rings films, or do you start them with Hobbit films first? It's this exactly the reason why I'm asking about the Blade Runner movies earlier and newest. See what I mean? Yeah. Now, you want to teach a person about Saruman being a good guy, about difficulties in the relationships between elves and dwarves. You want to find out where that bloody ring came from and how Bilbo got his hands on it in the first place. It might be smarter, even with all the problems and the complaints that most ringers have about the Hobbit films. I think it's a better place to start at the beginning and then go on till you come to the end. and then stop. That's Lewis Carroll. I'm just quoting Lewis Carroll now, but seriously. What do you think, Caroline? Caroline.
Oh boy.
Shall I say Caroline or Carolyn?
Either or.
Okay.
Caroline.
All right.
I'm flexible, so.
Okay. What do you think?
This is actually an interesting question because for me, my father, he read it, the Hobbit story, when I was in 5th grade. He read it to us.
Yeah.
But for someone else that's completely like new, like to be introduced to it, maybe Lord of the Rings, because for me, I'm more, I want to know the quality of the films.
Right.
No shade, I'm just saying. I just like the quality of the films are highly acclaimed more with Lord of the Rings, and then they could see, the Hobbit, and then tie it in to what they saw previously. I mean, that's, I'm probably wrong on this.
You'd start a fan with the Lord of the Rings films first.
Yeah.
Okay, Justin, where would you start? A newbie.
I would start with author's intent.
Okay.
So Hobbit first.
Okay, Hobbit first. Okay, because even with all the new Star Wars films that are coming out, some fans of the Star Wars franchise are asking that question: should I start with Rogue One before I start with 1977's A New Hope? You know what I mean? But I don't think. Should you start with Solo? Not necessarily. You should start, I think, with author's intent in mind. I like that. I like that Justin said that. I appreciate that.
That's true.
But yeah, I'm all about introducing people into Middle Earth in the easiest way possible. And I mean, I've got friends who don't want to pick up the book. I've got some friends who are very different. They want to read the books way before they even sit down to the Blu-rays and watch the movies. People have different ways they want to approach this. I've got a dear friend of mine. She's 70 years old. She found that the language in The Hobbit was had a density, and it was too much for her to bother with, and she didn't even finish reading the book. But she loved the movies, loved the Hobbit movies so much, and I have yet to introduce her to the Lord of the Rings movies. And when Amazon brings out this new TV series, right, when there's a whole new series about all the events that happened before the War of the Ring actually takes center stage, that's that question coming up again. Do you start with people watching The Hobbit or the Amazon series before they watch Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy? See what I mean?
Yeah, I
so
see what you mean.
that question is going to be floating around now that we have new iterations of the story that are going to appear at different points earlier in the timeline. So this is where my mind is at today, as well as fan casting. I want to talk about some fan casting as well. JC, how are you, sir?
Hello.
JC, you've met Caroline. Caroline, you met JC?
Hello. We met
This gentleman?
briefly earlier.
He is the proprietor and a great all-around guy here at Scum and Villainy Cantina. I hope you guys come on down and have little cocktails with us,
Yeah.
because today is the day for a cocktail, I think. It really is. It really is. In honor of voting, in honor of like election day, I'm just going to have a drink just for that reason.
Is it election day everywhere or just in California?
Certain states. Here in the United States, we have a big international audience watching. We have about, 8 or 9 like big state primary elections happening today, this very Tuesday. So, and my polling place is still open until 8 p.m. So we're going to finish the show at 6:30 p.m. and I'm going to run back down there and I'm going to vote. But anyways, yeah, it's a good day for drinking. Just for that excuse, for that one excuse.
I may be completely changing the subject while Justin moves his car. I finished reading The Hobbit last night.
You did? See,
And-
that's more than I could get my other friends to do.
and-
I can't even get Justin to read the damn thing.
I found the end delightful. And we talked about it. I struggled getting through a lot of the book because I felt like it was too coming from being the guy who watched the movies and didn't like them, then watched the movies and fell in love with them 10 years later, and then watching the Hobbit movies and liking them, and then reading the book and being like, this is child. This is for children. Where's all the weight of this? I found the end really, like, they really sold me in like maybe the last 60 pages. Like, it really left me feeling good. And then
Because his tone changes.
Yeah.
Professor Tolkien's authorship, I should say, for lack of a better word, changes in the last 60 pages of The Hobbit.
yeah, it all, I was like, oh, okay, I get this now. Like, I got the book.
Yeah.
And then what I did, because I was on an airplane flying back from Chicago, is they had, at the end of the Kindle book I had, the first chapter of Fellowship of the Ring. And I was like,
Really?
wow.
The Kindle actually has the first chapter?
Yeah, because they're trying to get you to buy the next book.
So a long expected party
So
is
yeah,
right there.
So
Okay.
it doesn't have the prologue, which is like concerning hobbits.
Concerning hobbits is fun. Dry, but fun.
So
Yeah.
I was like, well, I've got another hour or so on this flight. And I
Yeah.
literally just sat down and started reading Fellowship, which I've read before, which I was like, what is all of this? Like Tooks and something Bagginses and who
Grubs,
cares about
Chubs,
Proud
race
Feet?
girdles.
What is this? What is he talking about? And who cares?
Proudfoots.
But
Thank you, yes.
But reading it now with the having read The Hobbit, watched the Hobbit movies, watched all the Lord of the Rings extended,
Yes.
and having kind of like this background of like, oh, I get why they keep bringing up Took. Like, I get it now. I understand it now. And it was so rich. Like, even just the first chapter, because that's all I had to read on the plane. I actually, last night when I got home from the bar at 1 o'clock in the morning, I lied down in bed and bought the Lord of the Rings on the Kindle and started reading the prologue.
Awesome.
But it was, the prologue, it's like, I got this 80th anniversary or 75th anniversary edition. I didn't buy each book. I bought it all in one.
Yeah.
And it was like, there's like 140 pages before you even get to concerning hobbits, because everybody has done a foreword and everybody's trying to explain the appendices where, like,
Yeah.
you know, the British version, Tolkien amended, and then they did a carbon copy after, but they missed this thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, it's 1:30 in the morning. I cannot power through this. I just want to find out what happens to Frodo, even though I know what happens to Frodo.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
so I stopped and I went to bed.
So
but it was, I'm in deep, I guess is what I'm
You're
saying.
in deep now?
I'm in
That's
deep.
impressive.
Yeah.
So you think that fandom is going to get the best bang for their buck if they do both the books and the movies? Because, I mean, I encourage people who've never read it as much as I can. I do. I encourage them, pick it up. You'll read The Hobbit in just a few hours. It's a breeze. It's so fun. You can get into The Lord of the Rings if you feel like the challenge. But I really do encourage people, and a lot of them say no. They don't want to read it.
I think for me, trying to tackle the books would have been really difficult had I not watched the movies and kind of been like, oh, I really like this. I want to know more. You know, I really wanted, like, I appreciate the depth now, where I think had I read it, and when I did read it first, I tripped up on that because I was like, oh, 1,000 pages later, now I understand why they're talking about, you know, this Hobbit thing.
Yeah.
Whereas now I appreciate it in the moment. I don't have to wait to page 800 to appreciate page 5. Now I'm like, I get it right away. This is awesome. But I would, if you like those movies, like I would 100% read the book. But I'm that guy. You know, I'm the guy, and I'm going to get yelled at by my girlfriend, or my fiance now.
You got to get used to saying that out loud.
Yeah. I'm going to get yelled at because I'm bringing Star Wars up. But, like, for so long, I was, like, I had 3 Star Wars movies. So I know what happened. I know Greedo's life story, and I know Boshek's life story, and I know, you know, the commander who walks in the background of the one scene in the Death Star's life story. So I'm that guy. Like, I want, when I'm into it, I want to pull every little detail and theory and everything. So it's really fun for me with this superficial understanding that you get from the movies to jump into the book now and like understand. Like I was reading the first chapter and the dialogue between Gandalf and Bilbo when he's going to give up the ring. Yeah. When I'm reading it, I recognize the stuff that was lifted from the page and put directly into the movie. Yeah. But the conversation is 40% longer in the book. Yes. And you get a little bit... I find myself, when I'm reading the book, anticipating the part where Bilbo snaps at Gandalf. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, how is he going to handle it in the book the way he did in the movie? Yeah. And so it's everything that I enjoyed about the movie is so much richer reading it in the book.
That's heartening. That's very encouraging. That's
it's
very cool.
Really, I mean, look, I'm one chapter into it, which is like 70 pages, but still one chapter, so maybe I'll change my mind. But I'm really like...
You're onto something, JC. You're onto something, and I think we should identify this. There's a symbiotic relationship between the books and the films, perhaps in a way that we've never really discussed.
It's, you know what how I would describe it? I watched, remember, I talked about watching Fellowship on Netflix, and then I watched the extended edition. The book is like the extended edition for the extended edition, if that makes sense. Yes. It's like, hey, if you like the movie, watch the extended edition. Hey, if you like the extended edition, read the book, because it's 40% more.
Much more. Mucho más.
Yeah, so I'm in. You guys ruined me.
Oh,
or saved me
so
from a certain point of view.
Caroline, are you do you read the books more than you watch the movies?
Well, when I was growing up, my father, he read it too. Is it working?
Oh, dead battery. Here, use this one.
Oh, thank you. So when I was younger, my father, he read it to us. I was like in 5th grade, and so we had that luxury of, someone reading it to us and having it ingrained in our mind. We stopped at the Fellowship of the Ring, though, because that's when, school started to kick in and, you had to focus more on other priorities with school. And so then I started to rewatch the films again last year. So I think I'm more of a book person first before watching the films. Except for the Two Towers and then The Return of the King, because I didn't get to catch up. I only saw those on film. Yeah. And didn't get to read those 2 books. Yeah. And so I'm slowly trying to catch up, though. I'm trying to catch up on rereading or rewatching cool. and rereading again. So yeah, I'm just,
So it is good to have both.
Mm-hmm, it is.
I kind of see now. There's a certain way that the reading experience is enriched by all the wonderful visuals, and how often do people, especially with Ready Player One and other recent examples, how often do people say, don't bother watching the film, it will not enrich your reading experience, read the book first, and then if you want to, you could toss off the film if you want. You know what I mean? So, but this is not the case with Tolkien. It is not, there's a lot of people who say certain movies will detract, from what is the experience of the book. And I heard a lot of complaints about Ready Player One from book fans. All of the Ready Player One book fans. Were you a book fan
but
of the original book?
No.
It's not.
Well, then see, then you're not the person who would say that.
The movie almost stands independent of that book, though. It's like the movie is almost like inspired by the book, Ready Player One. Yeah. It's not, watching the appendices on the extended edition, Peter Jackson's like, you know what we want Isengard to look like? This. And he called that reclusive artist whose name Alan
Lee.
Yes, see, I've almost got it.
Yes.
So they called him and dug him out of some hole he was living in for the last.
They dug him out of his own grave. Yes, they did.
And they're like, hey, you want to come work on this movie? And so the people who have been most influential in providing the visuals for these stories for 50 years are the people who actually they brought in and they embraced to be like, hey, people who love this you have provided the visuals in their head. Yeah. Now let's help create those physically. Like, let's make those real. And I think that's a big part of it, right? Like the fact that the filmmakers didn't try to reinvent the wheel, where they were like, no, the wheel's perfectly round. Let's just provide a bite-sized version of this. Like, let's build what people already have in their heads and give it to them on screen with a little bit of, flourish. I don't think, like, Peter Jackson didn't invent the look of those movies as much as I feel like 40 years of artists invented the look, and his vision of those movies, and maybe I'm totally wrong in this, but his vision of those movies, he doesn't seem like he manhandled it into what he saw as Lord of the Rings. He more guided it. He nudged it like, hey, he was the captain of a boat that nudged the boat towards the end goal, as opposed to the guy who's like, we're going from here and this is where we're going. He was like, oh, everybody who's been working on this, come here. Where's the best path?
Right. That's a very fair assessment. He did do that. Also keep in mind that Peter did go around the world to hire the best of Tolkien artists, and not surprisingly, many of the artists that he hired had been inspired by Ralph Bakshi's film and a certain saturation of other 1970s and 80s imagery of Tolkien that came from the Brothers Hildebrandt, from book covers by Darrell K. Sweet, and a lot of imagery from Ralph Bakshi's film ended up being in the minds of the artists that Peter hired, and even Alan Lee confessed to that. He's like, I don't know why I did this painting with the 4 hobbits hiding under a tree root, hiding from a Nazgul, because the book isn't really written that way, and all 4 of them were not together at that point in the story. But there must have been something from Ralph Bakshi's movie that lingered in my mind, and that's why I drew it that way. So Alan Lee was drawing these things for Peter, and that's why Peter Jackson's movie almost identically replicates earlier images from the earlier film. We explored all that, at least I did.
So you bring up the cartoon. Can I ask my stupid question from a noob?
Yeah.
So I read The Hobbit, and I've read the first chapter of Fellowship, and I've watched all the movies. In the cartoon Hobbit movie, Bilbo uses the term fiddlesticks to express frustration, right?
Okay.
He doesn't do that in the movie, and he doesn't really do it in the book. I think the first and only time I remember, because when I was a kid, this is neither here nor there. When I was a kid and I would use a naughty word, my mom was like, come up with a word to say instead of damn. And I watched the Hobbit cartoon, and so I would say fiddlesticks. So I remember that very clearly.
I love it.
Now, when I'm reading the books and seeing the movie, that never triggered, except in chapter 1 of Fellowship of the Ring, one of the Baggins relative.
The Sackville Baggins.
Sackville Baggins uses that term.
I promised Twitter that I would not invoke the name of the Sackville Baggins, and I just did. Oh well.
But they use that term.
I just lost that.
He uses that term.
Yes.
In Fellowship of the Ring. So was that? How did that become such a prominent part of the cartoon, or was it not? Was that just me at 6 years old latching on to that?
Maybe so. In the 70s, when that animated film came out on television from Rankin and Bass, I heard words I'd never heard before. I was 10 years old? Maybe? No, wait. Oh, I better not do that wrong. I was 8.5 years old when The Hobbit was first broadcast. And Bilbo was saying words like confusticate confusticate and be bother these dwarves. All these big 50-cent words. And me, little 8.5-year-old me, I went running for the dictionary to look up things like be bother or confusticate and things like that. So I thought it was really kind of cool that I was learning these fancy pants words. And the reason why Tolkien wrote Bilbo with dialogue like that is because Professor Tolkien was poking fun at well-to-do rural Englishmen who don't have anything better to do but talk about their neighbors and, you know, with certain choice words. Yeah.
But
so
speaking of that, I loved.
I don't know if I answered your question.
I loved in Fellowship, which isn't in the movie at all, where Bilbo leaves like smart-ass gifts for all the other hobbits.
Yes. Yes.
Where he's like, hey, this is the
Sarcastic
guy.
gifts.
Yes.
This is the guy who never returned my books, so I'm gonna give him an empty bookcase. It's like, ah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love it. And they don't, because there's like 6 examples. And the first example, you're like, is he being a smartass?
Yep.
And then by the last example, you're like, oh, he's a smartass. Like,
Totally.
really.
Yep.
And they didn't capture that in the movies.
No.
I feel like they didn't. They, like even in the Hobbit movies, they didn't quite capture that you know, little troublesome isn't the word, but you know, the guy that'll rib you and rub you and all that stuff.
They got his Baggins side, not his Took side, so much in the movies. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, maybe so. Yeah. Well, no. You know, it was all about how his Baggins side was so prevalent, and Gandalf had to nudge the Tookish part out of him. And it wasn't really Gandalf; it was the dwarves and their singing.
But I don't think
That
I don't think that's representative in the movies so much.
You think?
I don't think so. I
It's
think
not.
in the book it is a lot, which I really
what do you
enjoyed.
think, Caroline?
What do I think?
Like,
It's more entertaining to watch you guys.
No, but do you feel like Bilbo is more serious in the movies than he is in the book?
I definitely got that vibe. I felt like he was more serious. I guess the funnish part was when they went into the barrels. And, Skype call.
Oh, that's a Skype call, isn't it?
We're getting a call from Hannah Greenwood.
Congratulations! Oh, she graduated.
Oh my gosh.
Look at
Oh,
you!
hey, how about that?
Congratulations!
Hey, we're in the car. We literally just got back.
Yeah.
Or not got back. We're just
Got out.
yes, what Maddie said.
Wait, you literally just graduated right now?
Yeah,
And
literally
You're
just.
watching the show? You're Skyping us from graduation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Guess who's here?
Ooh. Hi.
Hey, I have the gifts. Hello.
Hey there. How's it going? I guess congratulations are in order for you both. Congratulations. Or is it only one of you? Did only one of you graduate?
Yes, only she graduated. I'm just
Yeah.
here being supportive.
Well, Hannah, you look like a vision of beauty. Congratulations. You also look like a vision of academic acumen, and I'm sure that you're going to have to go run for the dictionary for that. But that's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining our show. Everyone's like congratulating you in the chat now. Oh,
I just thought that I should stop by and say hi really quick because, you know.
That's great. We're sorry that you're not here. We wish you could be here. But we have a delightful crew of mischief right here with us, here at Scum and Villainy Cantina. We actually have, excellent, we have customers. Yes, it comes in pints. Hey, how are you? Welcome, brother. Welcome, welcome. And now, Miss Hannah, tell us. I'm going to ask you the same question. When you start a newbie with their introduction to Tolkien, do you start them with the Hobbit movies or the Lord of the Rings movies? Where do you start them?
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, for her, Lord of the
For me,
Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
See?
I don't know. I mean, like, it depends. If you want to go in chronological order, then I start with The Hobbit and then work my way up.
Yeah.
But it kind of, I don't know. It depends on the mood that I'm in.
Well, it's not for your benefit. It's for a friend of yours, hypothetical friend, who is like never going to read the books. Maybe might never read them. And if you know, yeah, and if you know their temperament, I'm like, would you start them with Hobbit or Lord of the Rings movies? Come on, don't equivocate. Pick one.
You're like really echoey.
Yeah.
Really, what?
Echoey.
Well, maybe that's because you're on speakerphone in your car. I don't know. But
Hey,
where are you going to party tonight after graduation?
I just wanted to call and say hello.
I'm glad you called to say hello. Now, spill your guts. Where's the party tonight? Where are you going to party tonight?
Pardon?
Where are you going to party tonight?
Oh, a crazy place called PF Chang's.
Oh, wow. Wow, really letting your hair down at PF Chang's. Yeah, right. The question is, are you traveling? Now that you're out of school, are you going to travel anywhere for the summer? Are you going to be at San Diego Comic-Con?
Oh, I'm going to a small place called New Zealand.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. You are going to New Zealand. In fact, tell us the story about what's going to happen. You're going to go to meet some folks at Weta, are you not? At their little anniversary gathering?
Oh, well, okay. So we're gonna go to the Weta workshop on Monday and get some interviews as well.
Nice.
On Sunday. Sorry, Sunday and Monday. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, lag.
Sunday is the Weta Caves 10th anniversary, and we'll be there. So, yeah.
wow, that's great. You're going to be there at the anniversary celebration at Weta, right there in Wellington. What a place to be. I envy you quite a bit, dear. I envy you a lot. And now we're going to have to say farewell and move on with our show. It's great to hear from you today, by the way.
Okay. Well, Cliff, I'm gonna let you go because you need to continue the show. Then my arm is tired too. So.
Thanks, hon. Thank you. Good to hear from you today. We'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you guys later.
You better. Before you go to New Zealand.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I
before
will.
you run down under, way down to New Zealand, you better come and see us, okay? All right. Congratulations again, Hannah. Good to see you today.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
All right. Good stuff. Well, she's actually going to go hang out with Richard Taylor and Tanya Roger and all those Oscar-winning design people down there.
I wish I did that
I know, me
upon
too.
graduation of high school. I worked at I went to Blockbuster Video afterwards is what I did.
No.
For the summer. Yeah, that was my summer. That was my summer plans.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even think I did that. I think I played video games all summer.
I got
Enriching.
I got right into college and then a full-time job right after.
A full-time job. See, everybody else has these much bigger, more interesting endeavors than going to meet some guy named Richard Taylor at some place called Weta. Gosh.
Oscar winner, Sir.
Oh, gosh.
Night of the country.
A night of the round table. Yes. Okay. Fan casting for young Aragorn. All right. This is really intriguing that somebody brought up Riz Ahmed last week. Remember that chart? Do you have that big, beautiful chart that you had?
Yeah, let's see if I
Justin,
can bring it up.
Pull that chart up. Because I'm really intrigued by some of the other options that have come up in conversation recently. But I'm still interested in bringing up a conversation about Numenorian ethnicity and why I feel it would be appropriate to have Aragorn played by someone other than your standard Northern European Caucasian guy. Because the Numenorians were not standard Northern European archetypes. The Numenorians were Atlanteans. They were almost non-human. They were almost demigods. Almost, but not quite.
Do you, if you do deviate so far from, and I'm playing devil's advocate, but if you do deviate so far from Vigo for young Aragorn, right? You're just like, we're going to make, this is totally different, and that's just how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also do that for Gandalf, Elrond? I mean, do you do that for all the roles? Meaning, hey, this exists in the same world, but everybody's going to look different. We're just gonna go for it.
I like that question.
If you put Ian McKellen back as Gandalf and you have Riz Ahmed as Aragorn, is there something where you're not taking it far enough, like you're kind of half-assing it, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not going for it, you're not going all in on it. Like, does it create confusion in the fandom? Whereas you're like, hey, in this, we really should have made, Vigo was great, but he really should have been, this guy when we did the movies. Mm-hmm. But Ian McKellen we got right. Like, are you creating an issue if you cherry pick who you recast and who you completely switch?
Potentially there could be, and I fully get where you're at with that question, JC. The answer is it would have to be done with an added layer of thought to the way ethnicities are represented in Middle-earth versus the way that ethnicities have been traditionally represented in all other previous adaptations of Tolkien. If you want to depart from the standard way that it's been done, we should perhaps look no further than Ralph Bakshi. Because as it was pointed out in that, do you have that tweet? Do you have that image?
Yeah, let me bring that up.
Yeah, please bring that up. If you're only talking about one specific race, the Númenórean line, perhaps they are the ones who could, by examples set in the literature, maybe those are the ones who could be a different ethnicity.
This is Aragorn from Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings.
Ralph Bakshi depicted his Aragorn with a completely different skin color. He has been identified by many people, not correctly, as indigenous American Indian because of the ruddy complexion that he has, the way that the ink and paint department chose to make.
It's not just ink and paint. It's the sculpt of his face. It's the footage that they drew over.
It is.
It's the shape of his nose.
All these
the
designs
shape of
were
his
approved.
cheeks.
Yeah, by Bakshi.
That screams Native American.
It does. He looks but he was voiced by a British actor named John Hurt, who is as porcelain white as any other Northern European British guy, right? So, but what's interesting to me is that you are going to possibly confuse the fans. You might possibly get accused of playing fast and loose. Nobody wants to be accused of playing fast and loose with anything that is so classically appreciated the way Tolkien is. However, I think that there is some bandwidth for the conversation.
I mean,
because the Númenóreans were not of the same race. In the film, Sinclair Lewis, what's his name? The actor who played Isildur, he represented what the Númenóreans looked like. In the opening of the film, there's the battle, the last alliance of elves and men, and you see the king and Eärendil and Isildur both going up against Sauron, right? As soon as those two characters appear in the opening 7 minutes of the film, you've established the ethnocentric type of what Númenóreans look like. By then, it's a done deal.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
The Riz
Ahmed could have been
Ahmed
something else.
photo you just had up.
Yeah.
That, to me, I buy that as Aragorn in a second. I buy it in a second. And if you're going to go that route, then do you do something with the dwarves? Do you do something with, like, do you really, if you're going to diversify Middle Earth, right? So it's not just stuffy British people.
Yes.
Do you really go for it? If you're going to put Riz Ahmed there.
Here's the thing.
Well, look. Hey, I want to go back to the Neverending Story for a quick second. The lead character, Atreyu, was completely different ethnicity than the young actor chosen to play him. Hands down, they took the German book by Michael Ende and they decided, we're going to whitewash these characters, and that's something that Hollywood has been accused of and is guilty of for a very, very long time now. But the Numenorians are identified by a very smart person in our chat room who says that Tolkien had said that they are dark-haired, gray-eyed, and often olive-skinned. Olive-skinned, and that is the way that Michael Ende described Atreyu. He was not Caucasian. He was olive-skinned.
Are there any other descriptions from Tolkien's letters or writings that go into his source for Aragorn? Like, is he based on some Greek myths? Thus, we can assume he's Greek, Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean.
In our primary world, are all the myths and all the stories about Atlantis, are those Greek? They were recorded by Plato, I believe. Unless I'm mistaken, I believe it was Plato who wrote down the biggest historical record in Greek, Hellenistic Greek, about Atlantis and that mythology.
Right.
So your answer is, it could be anything, because when Disney gives us Atlanteans, they look like they're blue people from Avatar. From
go ahead.
James Cameron film.
So what if you were to do the entire race of dwarves as Samoan? Like, would that be, like, to me, that would be cool. You cast a bunch of Hawaiian, Samoan people as dwarves. Like, to me, that totally would play into, all of that. And then you leave the elves, these statuesque, almost too perfect British, and you get
or perhaps Scandinavian.
Or Scandinavian, yeah. And you get this really cool, it further separates them, right? Beyond just their axes and the way they write.
Could be.
You've got this kind of really distinct physical, visual separation between the dwarves and the elves, aside from just long red beards.
And they absolutely tried to do that in the movies. In fact, if you watch all the appendices on the Hobbit movies, look how much work and effort was made to beef up all of those actors. And I feel like if you're going to be true to Tolkien's characters, and you're going to have a TV series where production has to go a lot quicker, and you just have to find actors that look the part as Tolkien envisioned, you got to find actors like Islanders and Samoans or someone like that, that just you put a beard on them, or maybe they have a beard, and you put wardrobe and you're good to go. They worked way too hard to turn all of those actors, very funny comedians, well-casted comedians, to turn them into dwarves, only for them to have almost no dialogue. Most of them to have no dialogue.
Can I ask something also?
Yes.
I'm going to rewind into my naive Hobbit. The dwarves in Lord of the Rings are all very big nose. They're not particularly attractive. And then you watch The Hobbit, and Philly and Killy and Thorin are these are
stunning specimens,
stunning looking guys. And you're just like,
who don't have the latex noses.
Yeah, and you're just you're not.
Hashtag hot dwarves.
Yeah, you look more like elves with beards.
Come on in, don't be shy.
You look like a hairy elf. You're not. Is that just Hollywooding? Are you just like, you want Richard Armitage to look stunning on a poster? Is that why you don't put a big nose on him?
Let me take this one.
This is a constant criticism, and it's valid. It's a valid criticism.
I don't think it's valid because the Hobbit movies, the book was from Bilbo's perspective, but the Hobbit movies are from the dwarves' perspective. That's why Thorin has a very enhanced role. In fact, it's Thorin's story. All three movies is Thorin's story. So the Hobbit movies are from the dwarves' perspective. So if you're looking at a story, if you're going to tell a story from the dwarves' perspective, the dwarves are going to have this opinion of themselves that they're the hot thing around, right? Like they're everyone thinks that they're hotter than they actually are for the most part, and it's represented on film that if whatever perspective that you're telling the story from, that character will look the best, will act the best. I mean, it's why everyone thinks that in Star Wars, everything is told from R2's perspective, because R2-D2 is always the hero, and R2-D2 is in every single freaking movie. Like, and R2-D2 always comes to the rescue. So everyone has this theory that the ills of Star Wars are told from R2's perspective because he's always the hero. But this is a storytelling trope. Wouldn't you agree that the hero that's telling the story is the one that's gonna look good?
If you're going back to that idea of an untrustworthy narrator, okay, there is always going to be some self-aggrandizement when someone is telling their own story. Yes, but The Hobbit was not written with Thorin being the lead character. So the fact
the movies are. I'm cutting you off right there. The movies are.
I gotcha. You don't have to cut me off. That's called a compound sentence where I say "but" and finish another thought. Okay, yeah, I'm going to diagram a sentence for you right now in grammar class, Grammar 101. The thing is that the studio was so involved. They wanted to push against that. And the filmmakers are left explaining in the behind the scenes of The Hobbit, well, when they're young, they have normal ears and normal noses. And as the dwarves get older and older, then their ears and their noses continue to grow, much like humans. In human physiology, you'll get older and older, and you might stop growing, but your nose and your ears will continue to grow. That's why you sometimes see much, much, much older folks with a significant change in the way that their face, the facial features, and the symmetry of their face will change. It's just the way it is. But I didn't buy that. I was disappointed by that.
It's Hollywooded. It's Hollywooded with very good retcon.
Yeah,
is what it is.
It's got a reason to exist, and I totally buy it. And
I would have preferred all the dwarves to look like they had bulbous noses and lots of latex. I would have preferred that. Mm-hmm. I would have.
Mm-hmm. Smaug the Dragon. Mm-hmm. He normally plays Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yes.
And guess who was with him in conversation, him talking as Dragon, and Bilbo, played by the guy who usually plays Watson.
Yes,
yeah, Sherlock and Watson on a pile of gold. That's crazy.
Yes. Well, that's great casting. That's great casting. That's something that they did right on that, is that they've got Benedict and Martin
back
Freeman.
to, like,
Martin
what
Freeman.
do you start changing? Back to the casting, young Aragorn, and you asked, where's the limit? Where's the line where do you start changing? Here's what I think. I think the ground rules are, we know for sure that this show intends to be in the world that Peter Jackson created, because they've licensed everything. So
they're pulling old sets out of storage.
That's right. So
dust them off and use them again.
Let's just close that loop right now. This is going to be in Peter Jackson's Middle Earth.
That leaves us in a position to speculate whom, if anyone, from the original cast will come back.
Well, so who? But you're saying from a story standpoint, who should come back and who should get recast?
Right.
And Ian McKellen answered that for you already. And Ian McKellen went on the record in the press.
He was on the interview show with Graham Norton.
Having
a good old time on that show.
And Ian McKellen says that Gandalf is so old. And
he's 7,000 years old.
He's 7,000 years old.
Yes.
So the time difference between The Hobbit and this new show and The Lord of the Rings, he wouldn't look any different than he is.
Yeah, he said, I'm not old. I'm not too old to play Gandalf, is what Ian McKellen said. I'm not too old to play him. Yeah. But he also said, I haven't said no yet because I haven't been asked. I have not been asked yet to come and do this.
So you keep Gandalf, and I think you have to keep the elves.
Oh,
Kate
yes.
Blanchett.
Please bring back Hugo Weaving
looking
and Kate
the way they do.
Please. Yes.
So, but if you're going to cherry pick who is going to be, who you're going to remove the whitewashing from, and you're going to pick Aragorn and be like, hey, we're going to make this guy look as intended. Mm-hmm. If that's the only piece of the puzzle that you're changing, and the Gondorians are all going to look the same, and the dwarves are all going to look the same, and it's all going to look like, wow, the dwarves look Scottish, which is a little bit different than English, which are the hobbits. Like, I think that you need to, if you're going to use the same sets and you're going to put all the same looking people in all the roles,
And the same
you're
costumes
only
and
going to
weapons.
change one person, I think you are begging for trouble. I think if you are like, hey, the dwarves are going to be Samoan and the Gondorians are going to look more like this, and then, you know, these guys are going to look like this, and we're going to keep the wizards the same, and we're going to keep the hobbits the same, and we're going to keep the elves. Like, if you change 50%, I think you're okay. If you change one character, I think you're inviting trouble.
Perhaps so.
So they need to
Perhaps
go
so.
all in on looking at
Diversification.
all the different
I think so.
diversification.
So,
well, what do you
well-
think? Who should stay put? Who should not be recast?
Me?
Yeah.
Who would I rather offend? Let's see here. I agree with your earlier statements when we should have like a Middle Eastern or someone of different ethnicity to cast as Aragorn. I'm trying to choose my words carefully for the next one.
Do you, let me. Is Aragorn too important of a character and too well established to change?
Should I really answer this question?
I think that there are a lot of characters you can get from other things, even though they're not from Lord of the Rings movies. They have the same thing. You know, they're all the geeks know these people, but they don't associate them too much with certain things that they're in. Like Darth Maul, without his costume and horns on his head, who knows what he looks like? Who knows what he would fit in with?
So new characters can enter the thing.
Well, this is good. That could be new characters. Could be the doorway that is the remedy for this potential problem.
But they're not really new because the people who are watching it will have seen them in Twin Peaks and these like Dune and other geeky
Other performers, yeah. Well, now getting into casting is a whole another chapter. But just to talk about ethnicity and the idea behind Professor Tolkien having given us a mythology that was way too white to begin with. I mean, even when Fellowship of the Ring was up for all those awards at the Academy Awards, Whoopi Goldberg, I remember, made a funny joke. She was hosting the Academy Awards that night. And she's like, Peter Jackson, where are all the black hobbits? Where are they? The camera cuts to the audience, and there's a lot of laughter from Elijah Wood and Sean Astin, and Peter Jackson laughs. And then she comes back and she does another joke. She says, and if you did have black hobbits, what would you call them? Blobbits? So she had all these jokes at the Academy Awards, and this was years before it was #Oscars so white, and it became a cultural commentary that became really much more serious. At the time, I was writing articles on theonering.net about why is it that racism is an unfortunate criticism that is still leveled at Professor Tolkien after all these years. And it has something to do with a lot of the white nationalist groups embracing Tolkien and inappropriately embracing themes and misunderstanding messages in his books. So a lot of that has carried on for far too long. So I had to write a rebuttal, and it was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to write for the OneRing.net.
Isn't this a man who is basically writing, I mean, a story about his experience growing up in Great Britain? So the characters are reflective of that space, and that's why they look like this. And this was written in before. I mean, there was. All right, well, no, it was still segregation in the United States when this book was written.
Yes.
That misconception is what we need to correct here today.
That's what I was about to say.
But so in the books, is that the thing? But when you're making a movie in 2010 or a TV show in 2018, 2019, you have a responsibility to correct that.
Yes.
Well, first off, I think that goes to the start of this discussion, and what you allude to is what a lot of the conversation that we're seeing on Twitter and on our Facebook page is that any change, hands down, is thrown out because some fans are saying Tolkien wrote this for England. It should only be English. And what we're saying is it's not true. And in fact, the character Aragorn, we're showing from Ralph Bakshi and possibly from Tolkien's own writings might have been descended from the line of Numenoreans, which is based on Atlantis, which is a Mediterranean story.
Yes.
That is as far away from England as possible. It's not Scandinavian. It's not blonde hair and blue-eyed. It is a darker complexion. So the line of Aragorn and his father Arathorn and everything about that is true to Tolkien without looking British. Looking British.
Allow me to finish a rather important point that I wanted to finish, is that Professor Tolkien did write a Eurocentric mythological story. It is meant to be a map that is overlaid in the northern climate of Europe, and that is why when you go further south on the map, ethnicities change as the countries change. Down to the far south, in the Harad and the Haradwaith, off to the far, far east of Rune and other places that are far off the map. And one of our very intelligent, wonderful folks, Erovana, in the YouTube chat, says, Cliff, I want the Easterlings and the Harad in the show. We could get many new and diverse characters from there. And this is true. And it's something that they paid for. They paid money so that Amazon can have the chance to send a young Aragorn off into very different nations and to meet and have adventures with other
and people. And these are the people who are coming in on the boats and who are riding the elephants we talked about, where I was like, where did they come from? We get to play with that.
Yeah, it is. No.
Wait, which ones are the ones that rode the elephants?
Those, the Mumakil. Those were the residents of the far southern countries. They were called the Southrons. The Southrons. That's what the men of Gondor called them.
So who are the Harad?
They were from
Harad.
The Haradrim. They were often called the Haradrim by the elves.
Okay.
Yes.
What would you who know this world and this map, if you were to cast African American or black complexion people into Middle Earth, like if they made a family of hobbits African American looking, is that true to Tolkien? Is that something where you're like, no, all the hobbits should look the same because it's that? And is it a thing where you need to create you pick dwarves are all going to be African American because they're from choose a culture. Is the culture of Tolkien, does each kind of different, hobbits all need to look the same, elves all need to look the same, and you stay consistent within the genealogies, or can you mix the genealogies with the different races?
First off, humans in Middle Earth have all the different races, right? We just talked about the Haradrim and the guys that ride the boats, and even the Rohan have issues with the Gondorians.
The Rohirrim.
And the line of Numenoreans looks different.
And the Gonburi Gon, the Wild Men, the Pukal Men, the Pukal Men who live in the White Mountains.
We could have different races of dwarves.
You can. You know what? I don't think that Professor Tolkien says anything that specific about whether there could or could not be, hobbits with a different melanin content in their skin, and therefore they had completely different complexions. Somewhere in Concerning Hobbits, before Chapter 1 of Fellowship of the Ring, he describes the hobbits as having a ruddy, complexion with brown feet, and he's pretty specific in how he describes their genotype.
Where is this?
In Concerning Hobbits.
Okay.
So there's room in all of this for interpretation.
There might be. It's just that you're up against a historical record of every picture, every painting, and every book cover, and every movie and video game has always had purely Caucasian hobbits that represent the Midlands, or the Midlands of England.
Is it
really
easy?
English rural.
But is it easy to say, hey, took the same way that Reifenberg is. They're white.
I get what you're saying.
But there's the Broadway hobbits, and they're all dark skinned, and they live at the north end of the Shire, and we just don't see them much because they're all hunters, and that's where Bilbo gets all of his leather goods from. And they just kind of invent something that blends into that world seamlessly without offending the way that it's always been done.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in
the days of the early Roman Empire, you saw people that were light-skinned, maybe a little, olive-colored, maybe, or something like that.
the Moorish influence in Africa.
Hundreds and thousands of years, they mixed. At the time, there were also, dark-skinned people, and over hundreds and thousands of years, they blended, and you had a mixture. And next thing you know, how many black people do you see in Italy anymore? They're all there. They're all descendants of those people, but they all have blended together.
Yeah, indeed, that's also true. Well, you want to look at Hobbit genealogy. If you go way back into the appendix, Professor Tolkien tells us that there's three tribes or three genealogical background families of river folk. The river folk who were Smeagol and Deagle, way before those people migrated from the riverbanks over the Misty Mountains and found their way into the area of the Shire. That happened much later. But there were three family stripes. There was the Fallowhides, right? And I want someone on the live chat to help me. Yeah, the Stores and the Harfoots. There it is.
Hey,
the Fallowhides and those three different branches could have been different ethnicities. They could have been, because Professor Tolkien is not specific enough.
Do you agree with this comment from Scuffed World Order that Peter Jackson actually betrayed the source material needlessly by making the hobbits super pale and blonde?
That's quite possibly true. That is quite possibly true.
I agree.
I don't think he would have done it consciously, just might have been one of those things that you get used to.
It's just filmmaking.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you get this kind of like early 20th century kind of feeling in The Hobbit, because it was written in the 1920s, it was published in the 1930s, and you do get this feeling that Professor Tolkien probably didn't have many colored friends anywhere in his life. I just can't imagine. But if he did, his experiences traveling when he was in the army in World War I, he never went beyond.
But he was born in South Africa.
But he was only a little baby when his mom relocated him. He has no memory of South Africa when he was a baby.
Could you do so you know what Mirkwood elves look like, right?
Yes.
You know what
Lee Pace.
Rivendell elves look like. You know what the Lothlorien elves look like. There's another race of elves that we've never seen, right? Or two more?
Oh, there are quite a
question.
few. There are quite a few branches of elves.
One of these elves that you've never seen on film, right? You've never seen them. Could you make them black?
Possibly.
And
why not?
and it stays true. They very slender, very elven and elegant.
Body type has nothing to do with.
But they're just dark skinned.
This is the conversation.
And how cool would that be, though?
It would be cool. It would be totally cool. And
very cool.
Maybe it could represent a metaphysical separation of some of the elves that stayed in Arda. I mean, that stayed in Middle Earth and never went to see the light of the two trees. But I remember all the Star Trek fans having this exact conversation with the debut of the series Voyager. And all of a sudden, here comes Tim Russ playing Tuvok. No one had ever seen a black Vulcan before.
Tolkien said the most
conversation we're having
common
now.
type of hobbit, the most common type of hobbit, had the nut brown skin.
He did describe hobbits as having ruddy, brownish skin, probably to my mind, they were constantly working in the fields, and they were just, they were like really brown people.
So casting is wide open for this.
So
Casting
this is
could be.
so if you go back to the source material, it's all you can do anything.
You can do anything.
You
you
could,
want.
and it is helpful to remember other fantasy series have been guilty of whitewashing. Like I said, Neverending Story, the movie version was not the correct version of Atreyu.
All films are guilty of that, but I'm saying going forward on this show, not only can hobbits be darker than they have been, but Aragorn can,
Then you should do it. They should just go for it.
See,
It's
now
more
and we're
diversity,
saying
too.
the elves are true to Tolkien.
I'm
What were you
glad.
gonna say?
I'm glad that Jen Bourgeois found this in the live chat. She said that in the book, the Fallowhide hobbits were fairer in complexion, but their kinsmen, who were the Harfoots, were darker in complexion, and all of them had.
There it is.
They all had the difficulty of migrating over the mountains and settling in an area which was at the time the kingdom of Arnor, and making good with the king who had his northern post up at, what is that, Lake Evendim. Remember at Fornost? That's where the king in the north had his castle. So yeah, this could be wide open. I don't think you would aggravate too many people. In fact, it might be considered a really intelligent thing and a blessing to expand and breathe more multi-ethnic points of view into this typically porcelain white world of
Yes.
Middle Earth. Really.
But you just justify it the same way the chat group just did. That's how you integrate it, right? I mean, you're just like, hey, all these hobbits are white Brits, but they're all from this. And these hobbits, we're going to play with them for a while, and they come from this world.
a different stock.
Yeah.
A different genealogical stock.
We basically, as we're coming to a close on the show,
Fairly ready.
We've established.
Thank you, guys. I
that-
want to say thank you to the chat room. It's a fantastic
Yeah,
chat
you
room.
guys have been
Very
big
helpful.
help proving what we're saying is basically every culture in Middle Earth, the elves, the hobbits, everybody, is multicultural, multi-ethnicity.
Yes.
And who's guilty of it being so white? Maybe just the endless army of wonderful, wonderful artists who have always depicted Tolkien's characters as very, very
and
white.
a lot- and a
Ted
bit-
Naismith, Alan Lee, John
But
Howe.
a big deal was made years after the Lord of the Rings came out that we didn't see a black human in Middle Earth until Lake Town, until the second Hobbit movie. And all of the Kiwi actors,
That's
the darker-skinned Kiwi actors, like our friend Sala Baker,
Yes. I love
were buried in makeup as orcs
Yep.
and background helmeted extras. So all of the very awesome Kiwi actors in Lord of the Rings, they're buried in dark makeup as orcs. And let's not even get into the conversation how all the orcs in Lord of the Rings have gross British Cockney accents, and like they ascribe the evil people of Middle Earth to have this lower level, this dialect that which they avoided in The Hobbit by just giving everybody dark speech and tongue.
I think the first ethnicity that we see in any of the Lord of the Rings films is when Faramir is looking at the soldier, the body of a soldier from the who's just fallen off of one of the elephants, and they some of Sam's internal dialogue, and Faramir judges or attempts to assess what happened to this young man, what lies were he told, what fear was put in his heart to make him leave the safety of his family and to march so far away from home, to make an alliance with a dark lord that he never wanted to make an alliance with in the first place. And this is really the first time that there's a completely sympathetic white man taking a point of view of some other soldier who would have been the enemy, would have killed him if he had the chance. And Faramir judges him with such an open mind, and it is the beauty of Tolkien's dialogue, because it was actually Sam's interior dialogue.
Let's nip this
wondering what happened
right
to that
now.
soldier. That's a fascinating moment to
I
me.
think the ultimate accomplishment of this conversation nips this comment right in the bud. Radagast in the chat room says, Aragorn should have a lighter complexion. we're saying that's
wait,
wrong.
wait,
it's not true to Tolkien.
Wait, Radagast says that Aragorn should have a lighter complexion or he wouldn't blend in with the elves in Rivendell, which is an interesting point because he was trying to hide. He was a child in exile, and he was hiding to keep his identity secret from the enemy. So
that we've proven that the elves can be multiple ethnicities with darker complexions. You described elves with darker complexions, feet. So we're saying, the ultimate result of this conversation today, which I think we'll have more of going forward as we go deep into the text.
I like these kinds
and
of
pull
deep
out
cuts.
those quotes. Is that what Radagast just said? Let's just call that out now. He doesn't need to be white. You can look at guys like Diego Luna, Ben Barnes, Riz Ahmed. I mean, we can talk about the age gap on another episode. But the big thing is that this show can and should be more diverse.
Yes.
And it will make it more true to Tolkien than the movies ever were by being more diverse.
And
yes, absolutely. Yes.
Simply speaking from a cinematic perspective, and if you just want to be like, look, the only reason anybody's doing this is to make money, it will actually separate the different factions in the show easier than heavy prosthetics and things like you mentioned before. It's just like, hey, these people come from here. They look different from those people who come from here. You want to separate Mirkwood elves from these elves, give them a different complexion, and then you don't need to go into a 5-minute scene where somebody expositionally describes why they look different. It's an instantaneous visual cue. These elves come from a different spot than these elves.
And
these elves act this way, and these elves act that way because of that. And that it's
a lot of problems.
It solves a lot of problems, and the best film is told visually, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
And if you can do it through diversification, you're serving multiple masters by making that decision.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that though, because I was trying to word it, but I was trying to pick it out carefully, but you took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Indeed.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation. I thank both of you for being on the show and talking about this because
very much so.
Well, it used to be a tough conversation. When The Lord of the Rings was coming out in 2000, 2001, it was a tough conversation. I mean, we had endless debates and very hard conversations about whether gay Gandalf was going to ruin Tolkien. Yeah. But turns out Ian McKellen is the right man.
Exactly.
And that has nothing to, and his choice, his personal choices have nothing to do with the character he's playing.
I mean, it is kind of ironic to me. The irony is not lost on me that there's like 3 white guys in here talking about diversity. I would like to hear more from someone else, please.
I am
please,
Irish.
A person of color, please.
Of course.
Please.
I am Irish and South Korean.
Yes.
Interesting background. My grandfather from my mother's side escaped from North Korea during the border wars in 1950.
Wow.
And so he met my grandmother when he just walked all the way past all until the south end of Korea. And then he met my grandmother when he was 14, when he collapsed on the road. Wow. And so, but history, I'm from the lineage, I'm here, so.
Yeah.
History became legend, legend became myth.
Legend. Would you personally like to see more representations, and why would it be important to you?
Well, as a person of a different race, I think when there's more representation, you feel included in society, like you have a voice, that you matter. Usually for me, I try to find the right words to say because I'm afraid it might come out of the wrong context, or I'm fear that judgment or snap judgments, and so, but I think with multi-races in like future films, I think we'll have a voice, and so I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Identity works.
Yes.
It is.
Like it brings you into it brings everyone into the story.
Well, you see, then the one last thing remaining, since you mentioned gay Gandalf, is that for me personally, I have found 0 LGBTQ representations in any of my favorite fandom.
I know. It's sad.
I'm not. I have never personally. None of my brothers and sisters in that community have ever been represented in any way, and it really never mattered to me. It didn't matter to me because I wasn't looking for that in that kind of storytelling. What I found that was very redeeming and still is that thematically Professor Tolkien is telling us, and still the movies succeed in telling us, that even the smallest person, the most insignificant person who all the world leaders and all the great generals of war and all their great machinations, they disregard one little guy. And to me, I felt like maybe that was me, the marginalized little guy. Maybe it almost felt like I'm feeling the thematic uplift of what Professor Tolkien said. Even though explicitly my community has not been represented, I still felt like, yeah, we're working with that idea of a marginalized, sometimes innocent, helpless person being the most pivotal and powerful. That's just
So
so
you
cool.
see
That's just so
yourself
cool to
in
me.
that.
Exactly, yeah.
I did. I saw myself
It didn't
in
need
that.
to be so on the nose. You're,
Yeah.
oh, this is me, and this
Yeah.
is me.
It's a story of success against everybody overlooking you and marginalizing you no matter what. So it's kind of cool like that.
Cliff,
So-
this has been a wonderful conversation
This
and a
has
great
been. This has been a
bullet
really good
points
show.
on representation, and I'm sure we'll have more of these as casting continues and all the fan casting continues. And it's funny, as soon as we think that the fandom has locked in on someone they love, then we bring in a new kind of person or a new ethnicity, and they're like, what? That works even better. Like, so I think the audience is ready for it, and no matter what happened on Instagram today, with other fandoms, I think we've proven over the course of 20 years that, and over 80 years of fandom, that Middle Earth fans are much more inclusive than one might think.
How about
Politically and ethnically, and
You know what?
just in loving
And
ways.
lovingly, we have never had the kind of toxicity in our fandom that would chase one of the stars off of Instagram, like like Marie Tran.
Yeah, that
Can
poor
I
girl.
ask,
That
do
poor
you
girl.
think that is because it is it starts with a book as opposed to starting with mass media? Do you think it's people who have loved this property forever, in general, people who read, right, tend to be more educated, tend to be more open to ideas because they read rather than get spoon-fed something, and all these other fandoms come from television, film, this more passive
I don't think so.
engagement.
Because multimedia, film, television is instantly more global, more accessible. It's translated, it's subbed and dubbed. So and even shows are reformatted for local markets. So I think, the books took a long time, especially Tolkien's books took a long time to translate and then find a publisher in local regions. So I don't think the type of media comes into that. I just think Tolkien's message and lessons are very inclusive.
Very.
And at the end of the day,
Very.
everyone, he lets all of his characters make the choice to stay at home, to help each other out. And if they want to go to the far west lands, if they want to go back to Hobbiton and marry their girl, I mean, he just lets it happen. Everyone's free to make their choice, and everyone should respect everyone's choices.
Indeed. We could not forget that the Fellowship itself is a great literary symbol of multiculturalism. Coming from a late 20th century writer who could never have foreseen where we would be in 2018 with the Black Lives Matter movement and other cultural movements that have had such an impact on our political and cultural conversation today. But still, the Fellowship represents different races of people, many of whom do not get along and would not trust each other, and yet they are compelled by duty and by a greater sense of purpose to come together. And I think the Fellowship itself, the whole thing is a grand statement of multiculturalism being an effective and useful thing for people, politically and personally. And Professor Tolkien has that all in there.
And to answer
Really?
the question in the chat room, I think, from Nolan, we're here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific. We've been doing this live for 6 years, over 300 episodes, and now we're at the Scum and Villainy Cantina in the middle of Hollywood. It is open to the public. It is all ages. Please come join us in Hollywood. Sit at the bar. Join the owner, JC, and all the other geeks that hang out here, and you can be a part of the discussion. And if you're not in Los Angeles, please join us every week right here on YouTube and Twitch, and be part of the chat room because we want to include everybody. Cliff, thank you so much.
Yes, sir, Justin.
Thank you,
Yes,
Caroline,
sir.
JC.
Thank you.
Caroline.
Good night.
Everyone.
And you, sir, your name. We didn't meet yet.
Nice, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
And
coming
all the
in.
Cantina regulars. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody. Woo. Boy, we were unafraid to go down that conversation rabbit hole.
I had, my family was poor, and so we always had to change schools because we got kicked out of our home and had to find another place, and so we had to have a different school. So I was always going to new schools, and I never had, I had a hard time finding friends, but I always ended up getting friends who were gay. You know, I was not gay myself, but they, for whatever reason, maybe they thought I was attractive or something, they became my friends, and these were the friends I had all through my school days.
I think gays are just generally very egalitarian. They're just very like friendly, and they're grateful to make any friends they can make either. Especially in a time when people wouldn't normally would just be friends. So good on you, mate. Good on you. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. Hold that thought for 1 second.
From a
That's great. That's great, Joe.
well, but and